Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool. And my question for the day is this a Estwing Killer or Fiskars Killer? This is a DeWalt hatchet. The 20 ounce listed at the top, that's noting the head weight. The overall weight of this thing is 33 ounces. How does that compare to some of the others? Well, this Fiskars right here is 23 ounces, or almost 10 ounces less. The classic Estwing here, this thing weighs in at 30 ounces, so it's just a couple ounces. The DeWalt is a couple ounces more than this solid steel Estwing. This Heart over here, on the other hand, this thing is 37 ounces. It is a heavy tool, but it doesn't have a substantially larger head. Anyway, so the question is this a good enough hatchet coming from, you know, a conventional tool company to beat out Estwing or Fiskars? So if you were getting one, well, what is the price? The price on this guy here is about $36 off the shelf at the big orange box. If you look up Fiskars, you can find this thing on Amazon and other locations for pretty much little over $32, something like that. This guy here, the Estwing, comes in at around 46 with the leather washer handle. The way they make these, you know, this is actually a sheet of, or a stamped or forged, excuse me, a piece of steel, so it's got a shaft down here. Leather washers are slid up onto it, up to this collar. Some spacers are put in, and then they're riveted in place, and then they're ground down on a wheel and then dipped in lacquer. Tremendously good design. Old school, lasts a long time. Obviously, the DeWalt here is in need of some assistance. They use the same overmolding on a harder plastic that they do on their hammers. This is what happens if you use one hard. Kind of my base favorite that I compare things to is this Grand Force Brook wildlife hatchet. And this particular thing, just absolutely superb. Comes razor sharp from the factory. There's the initials of the Swede who forged it. This thing comes in at around 22 ounces. Remember, the Fiskars here was 23, and this has got plastic in it, so this is actually lighter. Just an excellent feel in the hand, nice palm swell there. It doesn't have this overkill, big, chunky, clunky lever at the bottom. By the way, if you really needed that, you know, to hang on to this thing, you probably shouldn't be using a hatchet if that's what's saving you. And excellent grain structure, very nice. But these are about 200 bucks right now, so you could get 6 of these for the price of one of those. But anyway, the Estwing, to me, it's always been a kind of a classic, but it has a very narrow striking surface right up front, so this tends to sink into the wood and stay. It doesn't split very well. If you look at the Fiskars is actually a really good splitter because you can see it widens pretty fast, whereas the Estwing doesn't. If we throw the DeWalt in the mix, you can see it's kind of right in between. It actually does have a fairly sharp front end, and then it slowly increases, but it doesn't get super wide, and that's just in the forging of the thing. It's a fairly narrow one, but certainly not as narrow as like the tomahawks and things you see, or the cheap, inexpensive axes. Did come painfully dull. But anyway, this is a good solid performer. This guy here is one of the worst ever. The whole shape and everything just doesn't seem to hold up to a lot of uses, I should say. This angle seems kind of bizarre. It's almost like a bearded axe, you know, used in fighting. But this particular one has got the rubberized handle, a shock handle that you can also get on this for a few bucks less. And it's super thin for a super long way, so it's like slamming a sheet of steel into something. It doesn't carve and shape too poorly, but that's not really why we have these. But if you go out and try to split wood with this thing, it's just not much fun. This is a Heart. This one actually was before Heart ended up as kind of the house brand for the big one of the big boxes. This one has got basically a chisel front. It's not that useful. You can see right here that it really looks like a chisel right up front and then just stays uniform for quite a ways. So a lot of stuff takes place here, and this doesn't really help at all, even though it has those fancier cutouts to try to make extracting it from the wood piece a little bit easier. Same hard plastic with overmolding. But anyway, so going back to the DeWalt, it's a good solid performer. It actually chops quite nicely. It is a heavy, kind of unbalanced in some ways if you look at where the balance point is. You know, there's a lot of handle weight there. If you compare that, say, to wood or something, you're going to get way up closer to the tip or closer to the business end. Whoops. You know, somewhere in there. Fiskars, if I try to balance that out, I'm not even sure I can get, there I go, I could get it way up at the front. So you can see it's almost entirely in the head, the weight. The rubberized grip is pretty solid. It's got a little bit of a swell at the bottom, the little hook, that's not bad. This is a little rounded. I polished it up because it was getting all messed up, but not a super useful head compared to some larger ones, but you're often not supposed to be pounding, you know, on the back. That's often when you had the conventional design of, say, a wood handle through the eye of the axe or hatchet head, because you could crack it in the weaker point here. But this is a striking tool designed for it, and you're not going to hurt it. Basically, it's a hammer, which also means that you can hold it backwards quite easily. This Estwing is a mess holding it backwards, you know, and you also have to be careful you don't, you know, chop into yourself. This one's a little bit better, and that has to do with the angle, you know, where you're going to crack into your knuckles. The Fiskars, this thing really gets in the way when you're trying to use it. You have to choke up on it. But overall, performs. Now, here's one of the keys. You might notice it's in rough shape. So I get on the phone with DeWalt and say, hey, I've got the 20-ounce Camp Hatchet you have, and the handle is falling apart. And they said, oh no, that's not good. We will send you a new one. Ta-da! This is what their sheath looks like. I've long since broken the one that came on that. This is a plastic little thing supposed to hold it on a belt. Not in this lifetime. But anyway, and came exceedingly dull. I mean, there is nothing there. Sorry if I'm scaring you. But there is no edge whatsoever on this thing. I don't know if we can see it up close. So it does need a pretty good sharpening. You want to have, as Abe Lincoln said, you know, a nice sharp axe. But I'm impressed with the warranty. That was easy. I didn't have to send it in. Didn't have to send them even any pictures. But I figured I'd have a video if they did. This appeared in one of my earlier videos, but the handle was totally wrapped in electrician's tape. Keep it together. But anyway, if you're thinking about a hatchet, I can say this performs fairly well. It's a nice, uniform, symmetrical hatchet. You can see it doesn't have anything really strange going on with the blade. Sometimes this little bend down, which is really pronounced on this one, kind of makes it a little difficult to use because of the angle. You end up striking things if you're doing it right just with this little bit. You can't really use that lower part very easily. So that's what that is. It's just the part you need. If you're thinking about a Fiskars, you know, pay a little bit more for a solid steel one, unless you were really trying to cut the weight. And right now, you know, we're down in, you know, single digits, sometimes below 0. If you're out banging around on wood, these do break. They're hard to break, but they do, and they warranty them, but it is a piece of plastic. So things can happen. So, you know, I don't mind the all steel ones for rough work. My favorite, you know, would be a good hickory handle like that. But is it an Estwing Killer? It's right in there. You can decide. These things, this leather handle lasts for generations. It's a lot easier to hang on to when it's cold, I think. And it's going to be more durable. But the performance of the blade really, to me, is what sets this thing apart. It's classic. It really should be updated, but I don't think they'll ever change because I find this definitely more useful for a lot of chores. And it's a DeWalt, it's a tool channel, so more tools, although Estwing does make quite a few. And I wish Milwaukee made a red one. Maybe they'll come out with one. DeWalt kind of led on some of the striking tools like drilling hammers, and now I see Milwaukee's got one out. So I would expect Milwaukee is probably going to have, you know, a hatchet out pretty soon. They do make a lot of cutting tools, a lot of nice ones. So we'll see what they come up with. But with that, Doc out.